I am recording this because there are things you can survive and still not escape. If you ever hike alone in the north of Spain and you hear a woman scream where no road should reach, do not chase it. Turn back, even if it makes you feel like a coward. The forest does not reward bravery. It only collects witnesses. My name is Daniel Alvarez. I was 18, freshly out of high school, convinced that being rational meant being safe. I lived with my parents in a town that smelled of wet stone after rain, the kind of place where everyone has an opinion about saints and curses, even if they pretend not to. My mother, Maria, kept a St. Benedict medal by the front door. My father, Javier, joked about it, then still glanced at it before leaving for work. I had planned a hike in a protected forest reserve about an hour away. The trail had a campground, a loop, and a clear map. My friends agreed for weeks, and then canceled one by one the night before. I packed anyway, angry at them and proud of myself for not flinching. Maria told me, without raising her voice, to stay on the marked path. I smiled, kissed her cheek, and promised. At the entrance, families were unloading backpacks, dogs tugging leashes. A wooden board listed rules about private land and lost hikers. Under the last rule, someone had written in thick marker, "No sigas la luz roja." Do not follow the red light. I laughed at it and took a photo, not because I believed it, but because it looked like something you would see in a horror video. The first hour was easy. Pine needles softened my steps, sunlight broke into pale stripes. The farther I walked, the thinner the human noise became, until I could hear my own breathing and the distant knock of a woodpecker. I liked that quiet. It made me feel chosen. When I saw a narrow side track, barely more than pressed grass and snapped twigs, I stepped onto it. I told myself I would go only a little farther. I told myself I had a good sense of direction. I was wrong in a way that felt small at first, like a harmless mistake. The off-trail forest changed quickly. The air cooled and carried a sharper resin smell. The ground held moisture that turned my boots darker. Once I heard a small bell, faint and far, like a goat somewhere beyond the trees. I followed it without thinking, then realized the sound had stopped and I had kept going anyway. The forest was pulling me with nothing but my own curiosity. I searched for a perfect clearing to camp. The sun slid lower without my permission. By the time I admitted I should return, the light had turned copper, and the shadows had lengthened into narrow corridors between trunks. I turned around and tried to retrace my steps. But the route existed only in my memory, and my memory had no landmarks to hold on to. After 10 minutes, I expected to see the main trail. I saw only more trees. After 20, my mouth went dry. After 30, I stopped, forced myself to breathe, and repeated the simplest rule I knew. Do not panic. Panic makes you spend energy, and energy is what gets you home. Then, a woman screamed. It was not a call for help you could answer with your voice. It was terror ripped out of a throat, jagged, breaking at the end. My legs locked. My skin went cold. The scream stopped as abruptly as it began, as if someone had cut it off. I whispered "Holla" into the darkening trees and hated how weak it sounded. The scream came again, closer, and then nothing. In the silence that followed, I heard chanting, many voices, low and steady, moving in a rhythm that reminded me of church, only because it demanded obedience. The words were not Spanish. They did not sound like any Latin prayer I knew from childhood. They sounded heavy, almost wet, as if the syllables were being forced through something thicker than air. The chanting grew louder. Leaves crunched with careful steps. Something was coming toward me. I dropped into a patch of tall grass behind a fallen log and pressed my face close to the soil. The smell arrived before the people did. Sweet smoke like incense, and beneath it a metallic bite that made my teeth ache. A red glow slid between the trunks, steady and focused. Not a lantern, but a beam, sweeping slowly like a stage light looking for a face. Through the grass I saw them, a line of figures in dark coats and hoods. At least 20. One swung a metal sensor on chains. Another adjusted the red lamp on a tripod as if setting a scene. When the beam passed over their faces, I saw masks, pale and stitched, stretched too tight, the kind of craft that looks less like decoration and more like devotion. My stomach clenched with a certainty I had never felt before. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I froze, praying in my own stupid way that it would stop. It did not. The ringtone burst out loud and bright, slicing through the chanting. The procession halted. Every hood turned toward the sound. The red beam snapped into the grass and painted my hands crimson. A voice, calm and close, spoke in Spanish, not asking, not warning. "Tiva si, I saw you." I stood up and ran. I ran without choosing a direction. Branches whipped my face. The red light stayed behind me for only a few seconds, and then vanished. But the chanting did not. It followed in my head, inside my ears, as if the voices had found a place to live under my skull. I tried to cover my ears while running and felt ridiculous, because the sound kept its shape anyway. I told myself it was adrenaline. I told myself fear can make anything seem close. Yet every time my foot struck the ground, the rhythm of the chant matched it. Like a drum keeping pace, I looked over my shoulder and saw only black trees and the brief glimmer of smoke. But the sense of being watched did not fade. The worst part was the thought that I had not saved the screaming woman. I had only saved myself. And even that was starting to feel temporary. The slope under my feet changed, and the forest floor turned uneven. I stepped into a hole I did not see. My ankle twisted. I tried to catch myself and hit a tree instead. Pain flashed white and clean behind my eyes. I remember stumbling, remember my hands scraping bark, and then the world folded inward. The last thing I felt was my phone vibrating again. Not ringing this time, just shaking, like something inside it wanted my attention. When I opened my eyes, morning light was filtering through branches. Birds argued in the distance as if the night had been ordinary. My head throbbed. A swelling at my temple made my skin feel tight. I lay there for a minute, testing the air, expecting smoke, expecting chanting. There was only the smell of damp needles and the sour tang of my own sweat. For a desperate moment, I decided it had been a dream brought on by a fall. That explanation fit neatly in my mind. It let me stand up and move. I followed a downhill line until I saw a wooden post with the trail symbol painted on it. I nearly laughed from relief. A family passed me, smiling, and I smiled back like an actor, pretending he knew his lines. I considered calling the police about the scream. Then I pictured myself explaining masks and a red lamp with no photos, no video, no proof, except my bruised head. I imagined my parents hearing about it. I imagined everyone deciding I was dramatic, or worse, unstable. The forest had already taken enough from me. I did not want it to take my credibility too, so I went home and said almost nothing. Maria scolded me for wandering, and Javier inspected my head with careful fingers. I told them I got turned around and slept on the ground. I did not mention the marker on the rules board. I did not mention the voice that said it saw me. Maria pressed a cold cloth to my temple, and then when she thought I did not notice, touched her metal and whispered a prayer. The first night I slept badly. I kept waking with the memory of the scream, sharp enough to make my throat tighten. The second night my dreams filled with the red light sweeping through trees. I woke with my ears ringing, convinced I could still hear the chant fading, as if it had been in the room and was leaving through a crack. By the third day I was exhausted and angry at myself. I needed to feel normal, so when my parents went out to dinner and left me alone, I decided to go for a run at the neighborhood park. It was a habit I had started months earlier. After 8:30 the paths were mostly empty, and the lamps along the track gave the trees a soft, familiar glow. I told myself it was safe, because it was not the forest. I ran 4 laps and began to relax. My breathing steadied. The cold air made my lungs burn in a good way. Then, near the darkest section where 2 lamps had been broken for weeks, I heard a sound that did not belong. At first it was a whisper, thin, like wind in leaves. Then it collected into syllables, the same cadence as the forest, the same insistence, the same wrongness. My feet slowed without permission. The hair on my arms lifted as if my body recognized the pattern. Before my mind did, I stopped at the edge of the dark stretch and stared into it. Nothing moved. The park smelled of grass and asphalt and distant traffic. A rational part of me tried to build an excuse. Teenagers hiding in the bushes, I thought. Someone playing a video on a phone. My brain misfiring because I was tired. The whispering grew louder. I turned around to run back toward the lights, and the sound rose with me, as if it was following. My heart began to hammer. I told myself to be calm, to not feed the fear, to keep moving like this was normal. Then the woman screamed again, not from the trees, not from the path behind me, but right beside my ear. The shock knocked me to the ground. My knees hit gravel. My palms scraped. My vision blurred with tears. I spun, half expecting to see someone leaning over me, but the path behind was empty. The park lights buzzed. Somewhere, a dog barked. For a second, I thought I had imagined the scream, because that is what logic does when it is cornered. Then I saw a figure in the dark stretch between the broken lamps. A silhouette stood under the trees. It wore something long and dark, like a coat, It did not move toward me. It did not need to. It simply occupied that space, and the air around it seemed heavier, like the darkness was leaning closer. I stood up and ran, not caring if anyone saw me. I ran out of the park and did not stop at the gate. I ran down streets I knew by heart until my house came into view. When I slammed the door behind me, the sound echoed through the empty hall like a gunshot. The house was too quiet. I told myself my parents were still out. I told myself the quiet was a gift. I took a shower hot enough to sting, and tried to wash the fear out of my skin. I brushed my teeth until my gums bled, as if cleanliness could erase a curse. Then I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, determined to stay awake. Sleep came anyway, heavy and sudden. I woke to a stench that filled my mouth and nose, thick and rotten, like an animal left too long in the sun. My stomach lurched. I tried to sit up and could not. My arms would not move. My legs would not move. My chest rose in shallow, trapped breaths. And the more I fought, the tighter my body became, as if my muscles had been locked by an unseen hand. A thought flickered through my panic. Sleep paralysis. A harmless glitch. A known phenomenon. An easy explanation. Then I felt the mattress dip near my feet. My eyes were open, but the room was too dark to trust. The smell grew stronger. Something moved in the corner where the wardrobe cast the deepest shadow. Two large reflections appeared, bright and wet, like eyes catching the smallest light. The shape crouched low, then shifted forward on all fours with a quick, practiced motion. It climbed onto my bed. The weight settled onto my chest, squeezing air out of me. A cold pressure pinned my ribs. My jaw slackened, stuck open, and pain shot through my face as I tried to close it. The eyes hovered inches from mine, unblinking, and a sound came from it. A rasping chuckle that did not fit any human throat. It leaned closer, and the stench became everything. I tried to scream. No sound came out at all. The eyes hovered so close I could see a film across them, like wet glass. Its breath was warm and rancid. The chuckle in its throat turned into a rasping glee, and the weight on my chest pushed every breath into a thin gasp. My mouth would not close. My jaw felt pinned open. I could not swallow on purpose, could not pull away. It opened its mouth, wider than any face should, and poured something hot and thick into me. It tasted like bile mixed with ash and metal. It hit my tongue, slid down my throat, and my body tried to retch without permission. The creature pressed harder, keeping me flat while the sludge kept coming. For a moment, I was sure I would choke to death in my own bed, not with a hand on my neck, but with filth forced past my teeth. Then the pressure vanished as suddenly as it arrived. My arms snapped free. I rolled and gagged, clawing at my throat, vomiting onto the sheets. I expected black stains, that rotten smell. Proof that would finally let me scream for help. There was nothing. Clean fabric, clean air, morning light. My stomach cramped anyway, as if my body remembered what my eyes could not verify. I sat up shaking and found 3 red lines across my chest. Shallow but angry, the imprint of weight. My throat burned. My tongue tasted like pennies. That was all I had. At breakfast, Maria said she had been calling me for ages. Javier watched my hands the way you watch someone carrying a glass near stairs. I kept my sleeves down and lied until the lies felt like another injury. At school, I moved through the day in fragments. A whisper from classmates made my skin jump. The scrape of chairs sounded like leaves under boots. My best friend, Luca Romero, asked what was wrong, and the concern in her face almost made me confess. I said I had hit my head in the woods. She told me to see a doctor. I did. The doctor asked about stress and gave me nothing but advice I could not use. Then my body started betraying me in daylight. One evening I was chopping vegetables for dinner when a thought arrived, neat and cold. Cut your finger. My hand hesitated as if considering it, and then the blade sank deep. Blood spilled. Maria fainted. Javier wrapped my hand and did not ask questions that would force me to answer. After that, smaller accidents gathered like flies. A stapler through my thumb at school, a slice on my shin from a box cutter while opening a harmless package. I began to catch myself staring at machines, imagining how easy it would be to feed them a hand. The urge did not feel like sadness. It felt like someone testing my strings. Near traffic, it was worse. At a crosswalk, I felt my foot step forward as a car approached, and I had to grab a pole to stop myself. The driver braked and shouted. I apologized, sweating, because I had not wanted to die. And yet something inside me had tried to offer me up like a coin. My stomach joined the assault. Food stopped staying down. Some nights my belly hardened painfully, as if a stone was turning inside me. When I tried to call for help, my voice would lock in my throat, trapped behind a jaw that felt too stiff to obey. By morning, the pain faded, and I went back to doctors, who could not find a name for what was happening. At night I heard the murmuring again, faint at first, then steady, a chorus that never turned into Spanish. I would turn on the lamp and it would stop. I would turn off the lamp and it would return, patient, as if it enjoyed teaching me I could not control the dark. The first time I knew I was not alone in seeing it happen because of my cousins. My aunt arrived unexpectedly with her 2 young sons while I was out. When I came home, Maria was pale, and my aunt was furious. The boys had run from my bedroom screaming that something in the corner wanted to take them. They described shining eyes and a laugh that sounded wrong, like a throat imitating happiness. One of them said it, whispered my name. I went into my room and found nothing disturbed, yet the air carried a faint rot smell, a thin thread of that stench, as if the creature had left it there like a signature. Relief hit me first, then dread, because it meant it could choose when to be seen. The next day it showed me another lesson. I woke from an afternoon nap and realized the house was silent. No television, no footsteps. My parents were supposed to be home. I walked to the front door and found it sealed, the handle refusing to turn. I pulled until my shoulder hurt. Behind me, the whispering began, fast, then slower, thickening into a chant. I turned and saw the living room full of hooded figures, dark coats, faces hidden, a line of bodies that swallowed light. They stood still and watched me as if waiting for my reaction. Incense touched the air, sweet and bitter at once. I tried the door again and felt panic turn my muscles into water. I slid to the floor, backing away, unable to breathe properly. The chanting deepened. The door swung open from the outside. Javier stepped in with grocery bags. Cold air rushed across my face. The chanting cut off like someone had snapped a cord. I twisted to look at the living room. Empty, sunlit. Normal. I made a sound I did not recognize and started crying. Javier did not mock me. He set the bags down slowly and stared at the corners of the room, as if he did not trust them either. That night I slept with the lamp on. Exhaustion won anyway. Something yanked my ankle and pulled me out of bed. I hit the floor hard. Under the bed, 2 bright eyes waited. The creature laughed, low and pleased. The lamp flickered once, and in that blink of dimness cold touched my foot. Pain flashed sharp and quick, 3 times. When the light steadied, the eyes were gone. Blood ran down my toes. 3 clean cuts crossed the top of my foot, as if made by a careful blade. I wrapped the wound and told myself it would heal. I told myself I could handle one more injury. 2 days later, the bandage smelled wrong. The skin was swollen and hot. When I peeled the gauze away, the edges looked gray. Fear turned to nausea, and I went to the hospital alone. The doctor unwrapped it, went still, and showed me a spreading patch of blackness. Gangrene, he said, the word sounding too big for my life. If they did not stop it, it would climb. Everything after that blurred into lights, signatures, Maria crying, Javier staring at the floor like he wanted to punch it. They amputated my foot. In the hospital at night, machines beeped and nurses walked past, and still I smelled rot near my pillow. Still I heard a faint chuckle from the corner when the hallway light dipped. It was not satisfied. It was entertained. When I was released, I finally told Lucia everything. I expected her to step away. She did not. Her hands shook, but she stayed. She whispered a name she had heard from her grandmother, the red beacon, El Faro Rojo, a light that marks intruders, a scream used as bait, a prayer that is not a prayer. She said old people in villages warn children never to follow a red glow in the forest, because once it touches you, it does not belong to the trees anymore. Luca gave me an address for a man called Sior Barroso, who was supposed to break curses. I went on crutches, desperate enough to accept any humiliation. Barroso opened his door, looked at me once, and his face tightened as if he had tasted smoke. His apartment smelled of herbs and old wax. He poured tea that tasted like dirt and metal. He passed eggs over my body while whispering under his breath. Each egg cracked too early, spilling dark liquid that stank like spoiled meat. By the sixth, he was trembling. When I described the red lamp, the masks, the voice that said it saw me, Barroso went pale. He pointed at the door. "Leave," he said. "Do not bring it here." I begged for a barrier, a prayer, anything. His answer was worse than refusal. "If they wanted you dead, you would not have woken up in the forest," he said. "They marked you because you watched. Now you carry their signal. They will find you wherever you hide." He shut the door so fast it rattled the frame. In the stairwell, my phone lit up in my pocket. No notifications, no service, just the screen glowing a deep, steady red for 1 second, like an eye-opening. After Barroso, I chased help the way drowning people chase air. Luca drove me to others, healers who advertised limpias, readings, prayers. Some were kind, some mocked me, but the pattern never changed. The moment I described the red light in the trees, their faces tightened. One woman refused to let me cross her doorway. One man burned sage in front of me like he was closing a gate. Another whispered that there are circles older than the church and begged me to leave before nightfall. No one offered a cure. The punishment did not stay confined to fear. My teeth started loosening without decay. I would wake with blood on my pillow and a tooth in my palm. My hair followed, coming out in clumps until I shaved my head to stop watching it fall. Food became an enemy. I lost weight fast. Doctors ran tests and found nothing that explained the speed of it, nothing that fit the neat categories they relied on. Their eyes began to carry that careful sympathy people reserve for the dying. My kidneys failed in a quiet, sudden way. 1 week I was nauseous. The next I was tied to a dialysis machine, listening to its steady hum, feeling my life reduced to schedules and tubes. My body rejected every donation offered. A specialist admitted he did not understand how I was still upright. Another said I behaved like an old appliance with a loose wire, flickering between on and off. I did not laugh. Through all of it, the presence stayed close. Sometimes it was the smell, blooming in my room just before sleep, that same rot mixed with incense. Sometimes it was the chanting, faint and patient, as if it was being spoken inside the walls. Sometimes it was the laugh, a rasp in the corner when the light dipped. I stopped telling myself it was my mind. My mind could not bruise my body. My mind could not take a foot. Luca begged me to leave town, to change everything, as if distance could break a mark. I tried. The first night in a cheap hotel hours away, the woman screamed beside my bed so loud I fell out of it. A neighbor knocked, furious, and when I opened the door, the hallway was empty except for a thin smell of smoke. The second night, a red glow swept across the ceiling in a slow arc, paused over my face, and then vanished. I lay there shaking, because I understood the light was not searching, it was checking. Months passed. My vision began to blur at the edges, the world narrowing like a tunnel. People told me to enjoy the time I had left. I wanted to tell them enjoyment is not a choice. When you live under a spotlight that no one else can see. One sleepless night, I searched online again for the sentence I had laughed at on the rules board. This time I found old forum threads from hikers scattered across years, written in the same frantic tone I now carried. Different places, same pattern. A scream in the woods, a red beam between trees, illness that doctors could not name, accidents that felt guided. Every post ended with someone vanishing from the internet, as if they stopped typing or stopped existing. A single comment buried under arguments and jokes finally made the story fit together. It said the scream is not a victim. The scream is the lure. The red light is the seal. The chanting is the rope. I sat in the dark and felt something settle inside me, cold and simple. I had never saved a woman. I had answered a call meant for me. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Curiosity is not always harmless. Sometimes it is a door you open for something that does not need your permission again. Tonight, as I speak this into my phone, the room smells clean, and that should comfort me. It does not, because a clean room can still hold a shadow, because a screen can still glow red without being told. And if your phone ever rings in the woods with a ringtone you did not set, do not answer. Do not look for the source. That is how it knows. You are watching.